Okay, good morning, everyone, from a very rainy Taipei. And for those of you who know, it's Chinese New Year's Eve in Taiwan. And it's a hi from Eric in Berlin as well. So yeah, good morning to a very snowy UK, I've heard. Welcome to this webinar about startups and entrepreneurship. So why are you all here today? So hopefully you're interested in learning more about the startup environment, entrepreneurship, and potentially starting your business in the future when you leave university. And yeah, so of course, please feel free to join the conversation, ask as many questions as you want. There's a function in Zoom for basically your questions. Please feel free. And yeah, let's get started. Let's welcome Camilla Sainz and Eric. And we'll start off with a bit of an introduction from you both. Camilla?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Camila Sainz. I'm from Guatemala, and I've been in Taiwan for 6 years now. I did my bachelor's, my master's degree here, and right after I finished my master's degree, I became an entrepreneur. And at the same time, I started studying my PhD degree. So yeah, here I am, and I hope you find this webinar useful.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Eric. I'm currently based in Berlin, but I've also lived in China for over 5 years, where I started most of my entrepreneurial journey. Yeah, I always like to describe myself as a village boy. I grew up in a village with 27 people, and I was one of these kids running into the forest, playing sports the whole day with my brother. And I had to leave home with my brother when I was 16, 17, for family reasons. And since then, I had to take care of myself. So from that day, my brother and I, we swore to ourselves that we don't want to have that to happen to our children or, to our lives again. And from then on, started either working in companies early on or started our own things. So yeah, when I moved to China in 2010, I was 23. You can roughly know my age then. I joined a startup weekend, and that really kicked off my startup journey. Since I realized that I can use my skills and just a team and an idea to start something, and organized events from then on. I really love music. I love building communities. So I organized, for example, the Fête de la Musique. Anybody who is from France might know this festival, and help bringing it to China. And then branched out to many other different areas. I ran, for example, a startup accelerator, the biggest from Europe, called Startup Bootcamp in China, where I helped companies to expand to China, in all kinds of different technologies. And since 2018, and I'm part of a new startup called Moku. We do in the telecom industry, helping to provide better internet to homes.
Okay, perfect. Welcome, Eric and Camilla. Camilla, do you mind telling us a bit more about your startup?
It's really intimidating listening to Eric. He has been done so much, and yeah, I hope that we can all learn from him today. My startup name is called Tutimi. We started only a year and a half ago, so I always say it's a baby startup. It's basically a high school diploma for me. And we are trying to connect foreign students that come to study to Taiwan to become private one-on-one tutors, languages. So they tutor languages. We at the moment have around 30 tutors that are learning, that are teaching French, Spanish, English, Portuguese, and some other languages. Yeah.
Perfect. So as you can see, we've got two, very diverse sort of backgrounds, but a affinity with Asia. So Eric and I met in Chengdu actually about 3.5 years ago now, and Eric was known as the king of the startup scene there, for sure, and helped a lot of foreigners start up in Chengdu. And Camilla is actually really quite famous in Taipei as well as one of the budding sort of new foreign entrepreneurs in Taipei. So I think I'll dive right in. I think one of the key questions I would love to ask, and I'm sure a lot of the audience would love to ask today, is how do you turn your idea into the startup? How do you turn it into a reality? What are the steps that you had to take?
Maybe Camilla, you can describe
I'll leave it open.
how you
I'll
got
leave it
started.
open. Yep.
Okay, I guess like everybody describes like a startup the moment that you feel like there's a problem and you think you have a solution, and your solution is probably better than others, or maybe you have some sort of competition, but you think you can do it better. So basically, starting a startup comes from a crazy mind that thinks that has a solution for something. So Tutimi started because I was a private tutor in Taiwan for I think like about 5 years. And then I realized like, oh my God, like foreigners like me, it's just really hard to connect with Taiwanese families because there's a language barrier, there's a culture barrier. There's so many things that make this bridge, like it's just very hard to connect. So I basically tested this, sending my friends to Taiwanese families and being basically a customer service. Like, oh my God, if there's someone that needs help translating or doesn't understand what's going on or like negotiating a price, whatever, that's how it began. And then when I saw it was working, I was like, maybe this can be a business, right? I did some research and I couldn't find anything. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I guess that's how many of us start. And like, that's how we started a startup. Like when we started Tutimi, I really didn't even know what a startup meant. So I'm an entrepreneur by accident. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, I always love these stories. Actually, a good description is, I'm not sure if you heard of the marshmallow challenge, where you have to build a spaghetti tower, right? Putting marshmallows on top. And if you describe how, MBA execs or graduates and how kindergarten kids are doing it, who do you think is doing better? And it's usually the kindergarten kids, because they have one thing as a huge advantage, and that is to just start. And that's, I think, the whole philosophy about, starting a company. Like, don't write 100 pages of business plans. Really, if you want to do something, start today. The problem is that sounds so simple, but it's extremely difficult to do, right? You have to overcome so many challenges and kind of ideas or thoughts that hold you back. Like, oh, but what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? That's what it's all about. Things will go wrong for sure, and you will learn from it. You will continue. Really, the most important thing is to start. And what's really important is you need to commit to this. Talking about startups, many people think that's like an overnight success, 6 months, 12 months. Hell no, it's not. You need to really commit for like 4 or 5 years to build the company and then grow really this little baby into something big.
So I'm actually really interested, Eric, on your point about being fully committed, because of Camilla, I know at the time when you started Tutimi, I believe you were still in your studies and you were still studying for exams as well. Am I correct? When you first started Tutimi?
I started Tutimi basically 2 weeks after I finished my MBA, my Master's in Business Administration. And at the same time, I just got like this letter saying that I won the PhD scholarship, which meant that I had to study Chinese for a whole year, like intensive Chinese, which means like 3 hours a day, every day for a year. So,
yeah. Okay.
That's how it started.
So I'm very curious about this idea of starting and being fully committed, Camilla and Eric. Is it possible to sort of transition from, say, studies to entrepreneurship or corporate job to entrepreneurship? And what are the practical steps that you had to go through?
Yeah, with commitment, I don't mean 100% of your time right now. I mean, not giving up, right? There will be pushbacks. You will go through, many mistakes. People will say no to you more than they say yes. and just commit to doing this. So, if you're working in a company, if you're a student, especially now, you're so young, like just do it. Like what can happen? You have your whole career in front of you. I mean, just get started. And yeah, just a couple of practical tips. I mean, don't fall in love with your idea. And this is something that many people get wrong.
Yes.
Because your idea is useless. Like whoever can execute better will beat you for sure. Like if you don't, take your idea, you tell it to everybody, you build a network, and you execute and make it big. Otherwise, it's completely useless. And why I say this, don't fall in love with your idea, is because who's giving you the money? It's a customer, right? And if your customer doesn't like your idea, then it's not a good idea. You usually go out and have an idea to see, okay, this could solve a problem that I've observed. But your customers might tell you 5 other ways, right? How they are solving it right now, or how they think they might solve it. So very likely you need to change this idea anyways to turn into something better. And many companies I have observed are failing because they're in love with the idea. They love it so much, right? They say, no, the customers are wrong. The market is wrong. I know it better, right? And that's not the right thing. You need to really talk to the customers and have this kind of sales approach, learning from the customer.
Yeah. The love, don't fall in love with your idea, I think is like one of the most important sentences in the startup world, because some people just get obsessed and then they're just like, this is what is right. And then like maybe 3 years later, they realize like, oh, okay, it's never going to really work. So you need to be just very flexible and make sure that you're pivoting all the time your idea, and then just listening to what you think is right, and then just go with your gut feeling.
Okay. Wow.
And about the commitment thing, I don't think it's like 100% commitment. It's just that your priorities will change like completely. I used to be a party girl that I used to love going out, going dance. I'm the typical Latina that I needed to be surrounded by friends, doing a lot of things, going hiking, going here, going there. But the moment you start this journey, like your priorities just change completely. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that story. We're also struggling with work-life balance. And I heard a great theory called the 4 burners. So imagine you're standing in front of an oven and you have a gas tank and you need to put fire into the 4 burners, right? One burner is family, the other one is friends, you have health and your career. And you need to make decisions, like where put a bit more gas and more fire to make the flame go higher, right? So for example, if you say, like, as an entrepreneur and a startup leader, like you need to put more into career for sure. Like you need to build this thing, which means you need to sacrifice a little bit on maybe your health, maybe your friends, and maybe your family. And that's a sad truth. Like you have only that much energy and time in your day. And that's what I mean with commitment, right? Like just because you get maybe some pushback from the market, don't just give up. I mean, that's why so many startups are failing, right? They just realize, oh, it's so difficult. Like I cannot spend as much time with my friends, go party every day. No, like
Yeah.
it's sadly not like this. But the reward is just so amazing, right? What I've learned in 1 year in the startup, I don't think any company can teach me in 5 years.
Definitely. Yeah. You become a different person, I would say.
I'm really curious as well, Camilla and Eric, like, because you haven't just started, startups. You've started it in foreign markets, in basically not your home. I'm very keen to hear about the cultural element, the cultural difficulties you had to sort of overcome when you had to, pitch your idea to a foreign market, foreign investors, etc. And I guess traction works differently culturally, right? Like maybe your product is perceived a bit differently culturally. How did you go around this? How did you become sort of culturally flexible?
I think the first year is like the toughest one, because you have no idea what you're doing. You don't understand half of the terms. You don't, like, having an MBA or studying business is just basically useless. And that's what I keep telling everybody, is just like, should I go get an MBA? I'm like, no, unless you go to a university when you can actually network while you're in the classroom. But if not, just don't. Because, for example, one of the questions that John just asked was like, when can you become like a stable person and socialize and exercise, right? And I think for me, it's not till now that I'm finally like learning how to balance, but it's not balance. It's just like you learn how to prioritize. Like for me, the first year, it was just, I need to learn how to do this. Like I need to understand what is this thing I'm trying to do. And once you start learning, okay, you know, like, okay, I can take at least Sundays to go with my friends for a picnic, let's say, or I can actually wake up earlier and work out. But the first year, at least for me, was just like, I need to be here all the time, 24/7, and I have no space for anybody. And I realized like I got burnt out somehow because I didn't have enough time to like video call my mom, my brother, to actually hang out with my friends, to do my hobbies that are like swimming or photography. So, so yeah, you have to give up so many things uh, for an exchange of actually learning new things, right?
Yeah, there's a question that Elon Musk got asked by somebody. You know, the question is, what words of encouragement would you give an entrepreneur? What do you think his answer was? He said,
What was the question again? Sorry.
like, what words of encouragement would you give an
Oh.
entrepreneur or somebody who wants to start? Like a journalist asked Elon Musk.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Something like that.
If you need encouragement, don't become an entrepreneur. Was that
Oh,
the
you know
answer?
that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
And I love that response. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's so true. I mean, not everybody is suited to start a startup, right? And that's what I mean again with this commitment. Like, it's not as easy as you think. It's not like in the movies that you see with this overnight success. It's you need to be brutally honest on yourself, because the reality is you're not ready to do this. But that's why, again, you have to start somewhere, right? To move forward every step. And like there are so many problems that you can't just simply think about it, right? Like I had moments in my events where, like, you know, we had permissions, everything, and police shut everything down because like one little thing we overlooked, and you're like, oh god damn it, right? This is so difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you do it again the next day, right? You're like, okay, you know, I go show the world I can do it better, and this drives really keeps you going.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the questions that Gabriel just asked. What drives you guys to be committed to your cause? What's your drive, Eric?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's a great book actually about this called The Big Five for Life. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, from John Streletsky. He describes your life, you know, when you're passing away or going through your end. The last thing that you will do is you open a museum. And in that museum, you have all the moments of your life, right? And the thing that many people right now are doing is they work 80% of the time they spend in their corporate job. They hate it. They open the museum and every day just sucks, right? They say, oh yeah, I had a bad day here, like my colleagues, all the politics. And as an entrepreneur, you actually have the opportunity to turn that thing completely around, right? You can put everything that you're doing to a cause. And at the end of your life, you show people, look at all of the joy that I brought to the world, all of the impact, right? People I brought together. And for me, it's really about, you know, actually motivating or like teaching the next generation to just start something themselves. I mean, I know that I can only do this if I do it myself. Like I first need to go through this startup journey. I need to build a company, raise money, right, sell to many countries. And once I go through this experience, I can like honestly use all of the concepts that are out there to teach the next generation, right? And this is really something that's driving me.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what I keep hearing actually in the startup community about the trial and error, and it's a long journey. It's constant trial and error and sort of improving and I've heard this term about making good mistakes. There's a differentiation between sort of good mistakes and bad mistakes, whereas good mistakes is, you know, something that you learn from in the long run. And a lot of the founders I've met you know, their successful startups come from starting 5 failures, right, kind of thing. Like 5 startups have failed, and then the 6th just managed to succeed. I think my key question here is like, what are the sort of the common mistakes, you know, Camilla, you've probably experienced when starting Tutimi, or Eric, when you know, with your companies in Chengdu, with your, you know, in your network, what are the common mistakes that are sort of good mistakes that people learn from, but what are like the sort of the very careless, sort of the mistakes that turn out to be fatal for when you want to start a startup?
At least with Tutimi, we have a thing that says like, every mistake, we just take it as a tuition fee. So it's not that harsh anymore, because it's just like, okay, we have to pay for this. It's like you're paying for school, basically, because everybody's gonna, like, how do I say this? When you don't know, and you're trying to build something that nobody has ever built before, it's really hard for you to go on Google and ask for those questions, because nobody has really done it. So you just need to try it. And I think one of the things that has helped me a lot is to study other people's mistakes, and then be like, okay, this is what happened to this person or to this startup, so I'm not going to do it. Because a lot of people, they go and, for example, I just read this question of how do you like hire people? What challenges do you find when hiring and incorporating staff? I think like a lot of people start just spending money on hiring people. That's one of the things that like I've heard around of my startup circle. It's just like they spend money there when there's no need yet. Like you can start hiring interns, right? That then can give you a hand, and little by little get yourself mentors. And then once the company actually has money, then you start hiring people. But I think in the startup world, like hiring and recruiting and like building a company of like, this is the CEO, this is the HR, this is the blah, 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 that comes like so much later. But that's one of the mistakes. Is like, oh my God, for me to have a company, I need to have all these people with all these titles. But it's not like that. Like usually you have to do everything yourself. Like I had to teach myself how to edit video, how to take photos, how to send emails, how to do a little bit of everything. And I think that's the magic of the startup world.
Yeah, I love that. Many people do that for their own prestige, right? Like, oh, I'm the CEO, I'm the CFO. And like, oh, really? Like, you know, how many finances are you actually managing? Nothing.
Yeah,
Okay, like,
exactly.
you know, why do you call yourself the CFO? It's so funny sometimes, yeah. And you know that difference between being in execution mode in the beginning, and then once you grow, you can move more towards leading, managing, long-term strategy. This is something that you need to realize, right? In the beginning, you're just in execution mode. Like you talk to customers, you try to do sales, you try to iterate, do marketing, whatever it takes to get to the next step, right? Every yes basically moves you forward. And then once you feel ready to grow the team, like managing is a whole new level, right? That's where an MBA can come in handy, because you learn about team culture and you know all that kind of stuff. It's just something that you need to prepare yourself step by step. And I think taking interns to actually practice managing, that's great. Like start small, like have somebody that you give tasks, you know, have check-ins, you see if you can build trust, company culture. You really need to start small with this.
Yeah, I think that the intern situation for me, it has helped me a lot, because that's the thing. Like if you haven't learned how to do things yourself, how are you going to come and teach other people, right? So like if you're going to come and hire someone to do the marketing for you, like how are you going to know if that person is not spending thousands of dollars in your marketing when it's actually not necessary, right? But if you've done it and you have like a small idea of like how it works, then like once you actually hire someone, you're going to be like, okay, this is $2,000. Okay, that makes sense. But if you don't understand it and you just hired a marketing person, that person might be spending 7,000, and then you're like, okay, that sounds right, because you don't know. So yeah, that's one of the
Yeah.
first big mistakes, I would say.
what I'm hearing is that actually one of the general mistakes is growing too fast, or actually like, I don't know, like putting cart ahead of the horse in terms of paying for a top marketing director when your product hasn't even developed yet, that kind of thing. Like I think people having sort of different ideas of growth. But yeah, I'm hearing from both of you, like basically start off small and it's a slow build up. And as Camilla said, it's like paying for tuition to be a jack of all trades. Like you train yourself to be everything in every role in your company.
I don't think it's about growing too fast. It's about starting too early, right? Like if you start scaling and you don't even have product market fit, you're just burning money. It just goes nowhere, right? Yeah, to pick up on this topic, okay, like other mistakes, right? I have maybe 2-3 more that I want to throw in here. One is focus. Like you need to be very clear on what you need to focus on, right? And it's called like keep the fires burning. You have so many things that are going wrong, and you always have this urge of, oh no, I need to fix this today. But you always need to look on this matrix of, okay, like what is important and what is urgent, right? And actually what you have to do is like do the things that are not urgent right now, but very important in the long term. So like how do you incorporate, for example, values or habits and systems into your company, right? How do you teach actually your team to work together and focus on the right things? Like as the founder and as the leader, you need to be very clear on those things. There's the story of PayPal, right? They started selling, growing, and they had no customer support. So like, at one point they had, I think 200 phone lines wouldn't even be enough to get all the customer calls. And then people kept visiting their homes and they ring at the door and say, hey, I'm waiting for my payment or something is going wrong. And they said, yes, we know that customer service is a big issue right now, but we have a much bigger issue integrating, for example, with like eBay. So they only focus on this one thing because they knew once that integration is done, within a week, they can just set up like a 200 people customer service center as a next step, right? They just they made this conscious decision, like what is more important right now? And it's so important to do that focus. The second thing I want to mention is openness, like called Radical Candor. It's a book actually by a former Googler. And that just means you need to care about the people and like communicate directly, immediately. And many people make the mistake. They are waiting once a year for the feedback session, 30-60, you do some questions. That's way too late. Like if something goes wrong and somebody is not meeting your expectation, tell it immediately. It's so important. Like your team and everybody is actually appreciating this because they know you're not saying this because you don't like them. You're saying it because all of you want to build a better company. And if you don't fix mistakes and get better, then there's no way to do this. You need to be extremely open and direct in this. And the last thing is, it's actually an interesting one, I feel. And that's the observation. First-time founders always focus on the product. What do you think second-time founders focus on? It's distribution. Because they know whoever has a better distribution will kill the one with a better product. You just own the market, right? All of your partner suppliers, you just lock them in. And if you can grow much faster, get more money, you either just purchase the other company or you just block them out of the market. So this is something you should not just focus on the product. Look at the distribution, right? How can you actually leverage different channels to bring your market to the people?
So the metaphor is quite simple, actually. It's not actually all about the product, it's how you get the product to the market, right? So how, right. How about you, Camilla? I mean, in the last year and a half, you've been through a roller coaster of a journey in Taipei. Was there anything that you would ever do differently in hindsight at all with this Tutini journey?
I guess like Eric mentioned, the focus part, right? I think all the baby startup founders, we are we have this thing of like, oh my God, we need to be everywhere. We need to know everybody. We need to understand everything. And at least I had the luck, if you want to say it, to actually be surrounded by amazing, amazing founders that have been doing this for 5, 6 years now, because of the accelerator that my startup got into. And that was good. And at the same time, it was bad because of the fact that I was comparing myself to someone else's journey a lot. I was comparing myself to someone that has been doing this for 6 years. And I was like, oh my God, how come they're doing so much and I'm just doing so little, right? But then I just kind of lost that thing of like, oh my God, this person has been doing this for 6 years. You're starting. That was one that gave me a lot of anxiety because I thought I was doing something wrong. And now I finally understand, like, Camila, yours is a high school diploma. Theirs is a master's degree, right? That's how I finally started to see it. That's one. And then the focus thing is also all the events I was going to, like, because I thought networking was really necessary. And then I realized like networking is useless unless the networking you're doing is necessary for your company. So because my startup is related with education and AI and ed tech, I was going to events that had nothing to do with this. And that just drained my energy, made me more tired, kept me more busy. And then I was like, no, this year is going to be different. Like the events I go are events that are specifically related with education, AI, and ed tech. And that gave me a lot more time to actually just go to the gym, go for a workout, go swimming, hang out with my friends, which is just very much needed for your mental health and your inner peace, I would say. Yeah.
So the work-life balance, this goes back to it, Camilla. Have you perfected a formula?
I would say I'm getting a lot better than like last year. Yeah, last year was rough. I was just like, I was going through this identity crisis just because I just graduated from a master's degree. I've never had a full-time job in my life. I've only done like internships or volunteer work and things, but never just started a company. I don't know how a company works because I've never worked for one. So it was really rough. But then I think this year I kind of listed all the things that I could have done better. And one of those is like focus, like just go to the events that are necessary, have some time for yourself, go work out, make sure that you're doing what keeps you creative, which I love is photography. So again, is not balance. It's impossible to balance, is just prioritizing. Like what is more important at this stage of your life.
Yeah, I try to loop in also a question that just came in on the observation, single or multi-founder. For sure, the second one, like if you have somebody that wants to do this journey with you, take them on the ride. And that's actually where your first challenge is coming, right? Are you a good storyteller to convince somebody to join you, right? And can find the right person to do this with you. And what's super important is like, don't have a homogeneous team. Like you need to have different experience, different backgrounds, right? If you're just two marketing people, like why do you do something together? You need somebody that knows maybe tech, maybe finance, operations. Like you need to pay very close attention to this. And on my end, like what I would do different is I would start earlier. And this is kind of my blame to myself, but also to the general education system or to what society expects from you, right? When I told my family, hey, I'm not working at Siemens, I'm not working at any bank or something, they thought I'm crazy. Like I'm going to China, to this country that nobody knows, and I'm even starting my own business. They thought I lost it. They thought I'm throwing my life away. And now 10 years later, when I came back, they slowly start to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? They can feel that I'm taking so much energy and knowledge out of this. But in general, my blame always to the education system or the universities is they only prepare you for the big companies, the MNCs. But like, I don't know, 85% or 90% of all the companies, you know what? They're not MNCs. They're like small companies, and they need you to help them. And I feel our education system is not really preparing us for this. So I want to see more, creative and critical thinking. Like how can you actually, help companies to grow?
I have something to add there. I feel like, I don't know, like how many of the people watching are actually studying business. I think a lot of us go and study business because at some point we want to run a business. But at least in my case in university, they never ever gave us that, even like that opportunity or that space to think about it. Like everything was about like, okay, how can you do well in an interview? How can you write your CV better? But nobody was really talking about like, how are you going to start your own company? Right. So that's like a little mindset that you need to change. And I've met very few single founders. Like most of them are co-founders, two or three of them, because a lot of times I've been wanting to just like, I just don't want to do this. I'm giving up. Like I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of it. And if I didn't have a co-founder that was like, okay, no, chill, just breathe, like get a beer and let's talk about this tomorrow again, probably Tutimi would be so dead like long ago. So, and it's vice versa. Like sometimes it's been him that is just like, oh, I think this is just not going to work. And then at that time, I'm just like, no, I think it is going to work. So, so I think being a single founder, like it must be really rough because you have to have so many conversations with yourself and you need a second opinion to almost everything. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, I want to actually go down this route a bit more, if I may. So, because some of the best ideas I've had is with really good friends around me, and I can imagine starting a startup with a best friend, and probably the skill set is very similar. And I get to hear this from a lot of startups and their founders and co-founders, where it's quite hard to manage a friendship once you become founders of a business or a startup. Eric, Camilla, any tips of managing, a close personal relationship when it gets, strictly professional and there's a lot at stake with your startups?
Yeah, it goes back to the story of the 4 burners, right? Like as one of my New Year's resolutions, I looked at this, and the one where I, miss actually most of the interaction is with my friends. I hear them also telling me, right, Eric, like, we wish we could do more things together again, like, and do something. I mean, put COVID aside, just having phone calls or something. And I feel as a founder, your mental energy is the most precious thing. Like you need to protect yourself from, not burning out and losing it. So, sometimes in the evenings, I just want to lie on the couch and, let the day recap in my brain and, watch maybe some Netflix episodes or read a book or something. I just don't have the energy to, talk to more people. But like as one of my resolutions, I want to actively work on this, right? And really, friendships is work. Like you need to invest time and keep building this kind of relationships. So this is something I'm working on more this year.
Where to? This is my New Year's resolution as well, because it's really tricky. Like when you're running a startup, the problems you have and the topics you want to talk about, not every person understands or share the same thing that you're going through, right? So like if I have most of my friends, they just went to corporate after our master's degree, right? So the moment that we go out for dinner or for drinks, let's say it's 6 of us, 5 of them are just complaining about their boss and the time, and then like, oh my God, work is so boring and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like here losing my energy, right? And then I'm just like, okay, I really cannot do this. Like I have no conversation. I want to complain like, oh my God, I didn't have any client this week. And then they're gonna be like, oh, okay, next topic, let's get another beer. Like they don't understand what you're going through. So I think it's very important to find a new group of friends. I don't know if like Eric, you agree with that, but for my New Year's resolution, I just really want new friends, and at the same time, just hang out with my previous friends. Let's say like once every 2 months, just to catch up, to know like you're alive, and then just to make sure that okay, you're alive. That's important as well. But but yeah, it's that thing. Relationships is a hard thing to balance or prioritize when you're running your startup, for sure.
Yeah. And that goes back again, like protect your energy, right? Don't surround yourself with people that say, like, what are you doing? Why don't you work in a big company? They will never understand, right? So just either don't talk about those topics or get away from like negative feelings and emotions. It's so important to stay focused and optimistic. And that goes back again to this commitment, right? Like no matter how hard it is, to keep going. You know, it's like, imagine you're digging like in a mine, a hole, and it's maybe 10 centimeters after on the other side, there's the gold mine or the diamond mine, but many people just give up. They're like, I cannot do this anymore. And that's why they are not getting successful. Like you need to have this perseverance and just keep pushing, because that is what makes you different to everybody else. Everybody else is giving up. If you just keep pushing, you will turn it into success.
Yeah. Well, someone asked about like, how do you choose who is a good person to work with? Do you have an answer for that, Eric? Because I feel like it's more of a gut feeling as well, and that's a lot of people go through basically breakups in the founder thing of just like you don't like that person anymore. So, what is your answer to that?
Yeah, I feel it's important that you have similar values and similar
Yeah.
goals, but different backgrounds, right?
Mm.
I mean, if you have fights over how do you treat your employees, for example, that will never turn out well. Right? I recently went through some harassment that clients didn't treat our employees well. I never had that experience. Like I didn't know how to treat this situation. So at least in the founder team, you don't want to have like politics or fights over, no, we need to keep working with this client. It's important, no matter if they're harassing. I'm like, luckily we don't have this kind of conversation, but this is what you have in big companies, right? Or this is what you have if the founders are not aligned on values, and that will kill your company for sure.
Mm.
Okay, guys, we've got time for one last question, and this is one I'm really interested in. Like, give us an insight into a day in the life of a entrepreneur. Because when I came out of university, I was petrified by the word entrepreneurship. I still am, and
You're getting there, though.
I wanted a structure. That's the thing. I wanted a structure, and I wanted, sort of 9 to 5 with colleagues and stuff like that. And I sort of didn't trust myself to become an entrepreneur. So give us an insight, like, what sort of daily habits and how do you structure your day? How do you keep motivated? How do you keep that fire going?
When you mention structure, I think like that's the thing that I will never have in my life as a founder. I would say, I don't know, like every day is just completely different. And I'm trying to change that. So like this whole year, I've been actually waking up at 5 in the morning, going for a run, meditating, preparing my smoothie, and then just writing a couple of things. And then either I go back to sleep for an hour, or I just start my day. I'm trying to give myself like an actual schedule, but it's basically impossible. I don't know how people do it. I've never really heard of someone that can tell me like, oh, I do like 9 to 5 and I'm a startup founder. I've never heard that, but maybe somebody does that. And for me, because I'm doing my PhD at the same time, I'm running with this and that. So it's just one day at a time. That's how I see it. It's just like today there's a new challenge. There's a new problem. We need to find a solution to it. For me, there's basically no such thing as a routine or as a structure. But I don't know, maybe Eric has been this longer than I have. Maybe he can give us some advice.
Yeah. Actually, structure is very important, right? And one thing that's very important is you need to take control of your time. Like, if I would show you my calendar right now, usually I take my mornings for myself, like between, let's say, 8 to 12. I try not to have any meetings. And those times I spend with, cycling, for example, to work. So I have a little bit exercise. I listen to podcasts. I believe it's very important that every day you learn something, right? I call it like training the instinct. You don't necessarily need something that you can execute in immediately, but you need to keep hearing this kind of stuff inside and outside of your industry. And then in the future, one day you will, oh, I've heard something like this before. I know roughly how to make a decision. And then I spent my mornings with thinking, like, you know, and this is this concept of deep work versus shallow work. Like, you need to have times where you dive very deep into topics. You spend like 2 hours, 3 hours just thinking about a problem and how to solve it. You know, this is what famous authors are, for example, doing, right? They just go into a cottage, they shut off all the internet, write their books or movies. And this is also, again, the difference between like successful people, because everybody can do shallow work. You just, you know, write a post on Instagram or something, everybody can do that. But deep work is very difficult, like that you have this focus and you shut off the outside world to concentrate. And then, you know, I have my lunch and the afternoons is usually full with meetings. Like I have many weeks with, I don't know, 30 meetings or more where I, you know, either coach people, I talk to clients, we have team meetings. And then my evenings, I try usually to shut off from work at 7. I have to say I'm not that successful in doing that. And here the big challenge is for us, we're a global company. So we have offices in Canada, in Europe and in China. So it's like across all time zones. And if you're, you know, one of the leaders in the company, you kind of have to connect with everybody in the team, right? So sometimes then like later at 9 or 10, I need to check emails again to see if, you know, is there anything that the team urgently in Canada, for example, needs some feedback on. But my night ends usually at 10:30 latest, where I just go to bed and I read, so I can have my mind to shut down and then go to bed at maybe 11:30.
Eric, can you tell us a bit more about the idea of deep work, deep focus? I'd love to have that.
Yeah, it's how the brain is working, right? In order to concentrate, you need around 15 minutes to dive in. And then your brain is going into like a concentration mode where it can focus more on a specific problem. But you can only do that if you have, if nothing is basically pulling your focus away, right? And that's the problem in our world that we live in. Like these things, they're killing your attention, right? They're just grabbing for it. So you need to learn to tell basically yourself, okay, for the next 2 hours, I'm not going to check my phone, messages, emails, nothing. I only spend it with deep work. And whenever you get out of the deep work modus, it takes again 50 minutes to get in. So that's why it's so important. You need to make that conscious decision. Don't do anything else for 2 hours. Just focus on a specific problem. And it got really hard now working from home. You need to tell actually everybody in your family, right? Like, don't disturb me from 9 to 11. If I have headphones on, don't disturb me. Like I'm in this mode. If you pull me out, like I need again like 15 minutes at least to get back into the topic.
That's a great tip. I think the only way I can relate to that is, you know, when I wrote my master's dissertation, and it was the last week was hell, and I had to shut myself off from social media, from my phone, and just focus on the dissertation title and writing as much as I could. But yeah, I completely get the point that that breeding that habit of basically focusing really helps. And you're right, completely right about the phones. They're made to grab your attention. Social media, your emails, your notifications. So yeah. I guess that's a key part in the digital age of being an entrepreneur is keeping out the distractions and prioritizing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, both Camilla and Eric. Our final part, we've got plenty of questions to answer in the Q&A. So I think first of all, we'll go with Alhan. So one question for Camilla. You mentioned that studying an MBA is not really that useful, but you're currently studying a PhD. Is that more of a personal goal or more for networking, professional, etc.?
Yeah, I guess it sounds like she doesn't like her master's. Why is she doing a PhD? So basically, it's I have a lot of different reasons. One of them is in Taipei, while dealing with investors or people that are a lot older than me, they tend to not really take serious a girl that is running a business and she's only 25 years old. But once you mention that that person is studying a PhD, I guess in Asia, that changes the perspective of many. That's one of the reasons. The second one is PhD is mostly research. So I only have to go to school maybe twice a month. It is a lot of networking because most of my classmates are 50 years and above, and most of them are business owners. So I've found a couple of really good business mentors that are my classmates, right? Like the very first day of class, they were like, "What are you doing here?" So it is networking as well because it's this university is called Taipei Technology University. So they do have a lot of technology involved, which is necessary for my startup. And the third reason is because I have a full scholarship provided by the government. So I'm basically getting paid to study. So it is my part-time job. That's how I see it. That's where I get the money to survive because as a lot of you guys know, like running a business, you might not be able to live from your startup, not till like your second, third year if everything goes well. So studying a PhD just gives me basically a stable income. So yeah, and it's a lot of research. I'm a very curious person, so I'm really excited to do research and see the results of like just real research. Yeah. Those are
Yeah, I
the
think
three
as
top
a
reasons.
founder, you also get the confidence doing many things at the same time, right? Like normally, I think it takes 3 years or something to do a PhD. Many people do that full time. You know, they're complaining, "Oh, it's so much work," and I'm like, dude, I would do that in the evenings. You know, next to all the other stuff. You just don't become afraid of this challenge, and you just grow your like have this growth mindset, and it's just one of the things helping you to get to the next step. So I can completely imagine, Camilla, how your days look like.
Yeah, they are crazy, but I think just like you're surrounded by people that you're not supposed to be surrounded. Like if you want to say it like that, like why would someone that is 25 be hanging out with someone that is 50, 60 years old that is already retired because a very successful business and now they just want to do a PhD, right? Like you manage to meet people that you would not meet otherwise. Where did Daniel go?
So the connection of Daniel just dropped, but that's all right. We've got plenty of questions from the attendees today. So I've got actually a question for you, Camilla and Eric. Like, I don't know who asked that, but which sectors or industry do you think are the most exciting for a startup right now? I think that's a good question.
I guess in Taipei, everybody's talking about AI and blockchain. Those are the two main topics, but I don't know about maybe Europe, China. What do they say?
Yeah, I would just look at the industry sectors, like which ones are winning, which ones are failing now due to COVID, right? The winning ones are anything technology, anything digitization. And I feel whatever industry you're going now, it always has some component of technology, right? Like if it's new retail, new whatever, you will find your spot there. But for yourself, you need to realize that it will be related to technology. And the excuse of, oh, but I don't have a developing background, like whatever coding background, that's just an excuse. Like you need to understand technology. How else do you know how your industry or how your company will be disrupted or changed? You need to understand what is blockchain. Like you need to understand what is artificial intelligence. And this is something you can just do with like 10-minute YouTube videos, right? But you need to have this curiosity, and then you can go to any of the industries that are applying these technologies now inside.
But I guess it's also important to mention that you don't choose which startup to start just because everybody's doing it. Like otherwise it's just going to be like, okay, this is not what I want, right? This is what the market is saying that is important, but then like not because everybody's building electronic cars, I'm going to jump into that because I have no interest in that. So. That's important to mention as well.
Yeah.
Great. So, like, do you think COVID is going to change the way to be an entrepreneur in the future?
For sure. I've heard so many stories right now of people meeting through Fiverr, and now they're co-founders. They've never met in person, and they're running a business for the past 2 years. And I'm like, what? And I was like, yeah, I've never met my co-founder, but he lives in Spain. I live in Taipei, and I'm Canadian, and we're running an edtech company. And I'm like, how is that even possible? But it is possible. Co-founders they've never met before.
Yeah, I think it opens up a lot more opportunities. I mean, before all the resources were held locally, right? If you live in Taipei, you have access to the Taipei resources. But now, because everything is becoming digitized, virtual, everybody has access to all of the resources. So it becomes easier to access events virtually, conferences, investors, clients. Like my life in 2019 was 200 days flying on the road. Like I fly to whatever, meet investors, meet clients. That was so exhausting. And now in 2020, I just open my Zoom calls every day and I can do many more, right? So I think for entrepreneurs, this opened up a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Great, that's super interesting, guys. Thanks for your answers. So we're gonna finish with one more question. I think that's gonna be very useful for the students who are watching the webinar right now. If you have to choose your favorite entrepreneurs or most inspiring startup, which one would you choose and why?
For me, I guess is kind of maybe biased just because I'm a female entrepreneur. So I'm obsessed with female entrepreneurs. So I would say Canva. I think everybody's using Canva at this point. She started Canva with her boyfriend. And then my second one would be probably the Bumble founder. She's also a female founder. She quit Tinder and then just started her own dating app. And I think this month her company is going to go IPO. But there's so many amazing founders. There's even a website that I love looking at. It's called Founder without the E. And you guys can find so much inspiration, so many interviews, so many blogs that are super interesting to read.
Yeah, I love the story of Canva also. There's actually a great podcast. It's called How I Built This.
Yes.
Free on any podcast platform. You hear all the stories of like great startups. I mean, I personally, I love, the attitude and the impact that Elon Musk is doing. I know that's very cliche, but I'm just super impressed by how he just doesn't give a damn of what the world is thinking, right? He has his goal and he's just pushing for it. And as you can see, like many big companies, they're like making way now for him pushing through. And I can see that he will transform and, improve the world. I'm very impressed by how he's doing that.
Great, thank you so much. Super interesting to hear your opinion and your answers about the question. So we're gonna end that webinar now. Thank you so much for joining us. Daniel is like still out of connection, so sorry. But that was really great to hear from you both. Thank you for joining us today. Feel free, our attendees, to add Camilla and Eric on LinkedIn if you have any further question. I'm sure they would be happy to hear from you as well. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Sure.
And happy Chinese New Year, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.